Hola y bienvenidos a este curso de Español 2. Soy el profesor del curso, Bill Worden, y es un verdadero placer estar aquí con ustedes. Este segundo curso es una continuación del primer curso de español que yo enseñé y que algunos de ustedes probablemente han tomado. Digo algunos porque para otros de ustedes este segundo curso va a ser su primero conmigo. A todos los estudiantes les doy la bienvenida y también quiero decirles gracias a ustedes. Es un honor poder ser su profesor. Les estoy muy agradecido a todos los estudiantes de este curso por haber decidido estudiar español conmigo. En estas lecciones yo voy a explicar y ustedes van a aprender varios aspectos culturales del mundo hispanohablante. También nosotros trabajaremos juntos con la gramática y con el vocabulario de la lengua española. En este curso ustedes van a mejorar su habilidad de entender, hablar, leer y escribir la lengua. ¿Y cómo vamos a hacer todo esto? Con práctica, mucha práctica. Yo he preparado las lecciones y voy a tratar de presentarlas de manera lógica e interesante. El trabajo de ustedes será hacer estas tres cosas importantes. Mirar las 30 lecciones con atención, hacer los ejercicios orales y escritos después de cada nueva lección y practicar su español fuera del curso con otras personas que también hablan español o que, por lo menos, están estudiando la lengua. Pues es hora de concluir esta pequeña introducción en español. Pero tengo unas palabras finales en el idioma para ustedes. Es muy bueno que ustedes tengan interés en mejorar sus habilidades con la lengua. En este curso quiero que ustedes aprendan mucho. ¿Y por qué? Pues porque es necesario que haya más gente bilingüe en el mundo con la habilidad de entender, hablar, leer y escribir el inglés y el español. Y ahora sí. Hemos llegado a la conclusión de la sección introductoria de esta primera lección. As I was just saying, I'm Bill Worden, and I'd like to welcome you to Learning Spanish 2, the second Spanish course from the Great Courses. Some of you have undoubtedly completed the first Learning Spanish course. To those students I say, welcome back. I'm delighted that you've decided to continue your Spanish studies with me. To the new students who didn't take the first course, I'd like to welcome you as well. I hope you find this course a useful tool to help you improve your abilities to communicate in Spanish. As we begin this linguistic adventure, I'd like to explain a bit about my approach to teaching this second course in the language. Based on my experience through the years, the challenge of creating a successful second language course is a bit like the one faced by Goldilocks, who was searching for the right bowl of porridge to eat. As you teach students grammar, vocabulary, and cultural topics, you don't want to go too fast or too slow. With student learning in mind, the goal moving forward through the course is for the pace to be just right. And this involves two different but related activities. Making sure that students have mastered the fundamentals of the language, while, at the same time, introducing them to more advanced topics that will further improve their ability to communicate in the language. In terms of acquiring vocabulary, throughout this course you'll be learning 30 to 40 words or expressions in every lesson. As for grammar, Experience has taught me that students in a second language class tend to advance more quickly and more successfully through new material only after they've been reacquainted with the fundamentals of the language. This is the case because a mastery of fundamental concepts will open the door for you to master advanced concepts with fewer difficulties. So, we will be spending some time in these early lessons reviewing, quickly, nimbly, with all good speed, important grammar topics covered in the first Learning Spanish course. But even as we review, we'll be learning new things as well. For example, in our next lesson, we'll take a quick look at stem-changing verbs in the present, something we studied in the first course. But in addition to the 4 kinds of stem-changing verbs we've already discussed, I'll introduce 2 new kinds of stem-changing verbs as well. If you feel a bit lost and think that we're moving too quickly, I have some thoughts that might be helpful. If you have the first course, it's probably a good idea to rewatch lessons regarding topics that you're not quite grasping. And if you're struggling but don't have the first course, you might want to get a hold of it and watch it so your Spanish reaches the level it needs to be at so you can get the most out of this second course. What we're about to do in these next few lessons is what professional baseball players do every spring in Florida and Arizona. When the coach, during spring training, decides that it's time to have batting practice, the players don't say, "We already know how to bat, let's work on something else." They go through the necessary exercises to get back into baseball shape. So now it's time for us to get into Spanish shape. Let's begin by talking about the opening moments of this lesson, when I was introducing the course in Spanish. Even though you have experience studying Spanish, I didn't expect you to understand everything I said. In fact, I'd be surprised if you did. And I say this not because I have low expectations for my students. I say it because in my introduction, I purposely included vocabulary and grammar that go beyond what is taught in an introductory Spanish course. Hold on, Professor, you might be thinking. You purposely said things too advanced for our level? Is that really fair? I thought you were on our side. Well, students, I am on your side. And an important skill you'll need to develop as a language learner is how to make sense of something that's beyond your current level of comprehension. In fact, that's how the language works in the real world. When you start speaking Spanish, the people you're talking to are not going to limit themselves to exactly the vocabulary and grammar topics you understand well. They'll just speak Spanish, and it will be up to you to try to figure out what they're saying. And I'm going to help you develop the skills to do this. So, in this course, you'll be learning not only grammar, vocabulary, and cultural information about the Spanish-speaking world, I'll also be teaching you how to approach the Spanish language so you can communicate better. And one extremely useful technique that will help you understand more of what you hear or read is to use what I call the 3 C's of comprehension: cognates, context, and conjecture. Cognates are words that are the same or similar in 2 languages. And because Spanish and English share so many cognates, if a word in Spanish seems to be like one in English, it probably has the same meaning. In fact, let's look now at some new vocabulary. I'll give you the Spanish word, you give me the English. La forma is the form. La realidad is the reality. El motivo, the motive. El límite, the limit. Social, social. Final, final. Respetar, to respect. Now, repeat these new words. La forma, la realidad, el motivo, el límite, social, final, respetar. Let me point out that there are words known as false cognates, words that look the same but have different meanings. The noun el éxito, for example, looks like it means exit, but it actually means success. The actual word in Spanish for exit is la salida, which is related to the Spanish verb meaning to leave, to go out, which you might remember is salir. Repeat these two new nouns, el éxito, la salida. Still, false cognates are relatively rare, meaning that you're most often going to be right when you guess that a Spanish word means the same as the English word it looks or sounds like. Our second tool for comprehension is context. And understanding the context of how a word or expression is used can help you greatly as you work to figure out its meaning. Here's a new word, lograr. Do you have any idea what it might mean? Well, it's not a cognate, so if you haven't seen this word before, it would be almost impossible to guess what it might mean by looking only at the word itself. But what if you see lograr used in this context? Me gusta hablar con Marcos, pero habla tan rápido que no puedo lograr entender sus palabras. Well, let's see what we can figure out. I like to talk with Marcos, but he speaks so quickly, note that rápido is a cognate with rapid, that I can't lograr to understand his words. Given that context, you might be able to guess that lograr means, well, let's see. He speaks so quickly that I can't, go ahead, guess. I can't manage to understand his words. Did you manage to guess something like manage? If so, fenomenal, another cognate. Context just helped you understand something new. And as we just worked with context, we also use the third C in our toolbox, conjecture. When I encourage you to make use of conjecture, I'm really saying that when you encounter Spanish that you don't entirely understand, you should do your best to make a guess. Your guess could be related to an unfamiliar word or even some grammar that you've never encountered before. If you just used conjecture and still couldn't figure out lograr, that's fine too. You won't always guess correctly, but the very act of using conjecture makes it more likely that you'll understand what you're hearing or reading. And making it a habit to use conjecture, many language students discover that they're much better at guessing than they might have guessed. So, our new verb lograr means to manage, to achieve, or to get. ¿Qué hora es? Es hora de empezar. It's time to begin. ¿Vamos a hacerlo? Let's do it. It's time to set sail on our journey with the Spanish language. And let's start by talking briefly about nouns and articles. We know that all nouns in Spanish have a gender. They're either masculine or feminine. Most nouns ending in O are masculine, while most nouns ending in A are feminine. There are exceptions, like the day, which is el día, and the hand, which is la mano. But most often, an O ending means the noun is masculine, while an A ending means it's feminine. Beyond O and A, there are other endings that can help indicate whether a word is masculine or feminine. Words ending in yon, ad, and tud are almost always feminine, as can be seen in, repeat, la conexión, la actividad, la actitud. The endings R and L quite often, not always, but usually, indicate that the noun is masculine. Repitan, el color, el papel. As for articles, there are two kinds, definite and indefinite. While English has one definite article, the, in Spanish there are 4 forms of the definite article. So let's use them now. The way to say the motive in Spanish is el motivo. The motives is los motivos. The form, la forma. The forms, las formas. So those are our 4 definite articles, el, la, los, las. The indefinite article in English is a or an in the singular and some in the plural. So the way to say a limit is un límite. Some limits is unos límites. A reality is una realidad. Some realities is unas realidades. Those then are our 4 indefinite articles, un, una, unos, unas. Remember, feminine nouns that begin with a stressed A sound use el and un instead of la and una. Area is a cognate in Spanish. It's área, a word that begins with an accented A. So, to say the area, you'd say el área. And an area is un área. If the initial A of a feminine noun is not stressed, the regular article of la or una is used. Consider aventura, which means, guess. Right, it means adventure. The adventure in Spanish is la aventura. An adventure is una aventura. Here's one last point on articles. I recommend that students always learn new nouns with the appropriate definite article. And throughout this course, I will always introduce a new noun with its definite article. Let me explain why as I introduce a new cognate to you. The word image in Spanish is imagen. Okay, good. So you've learned a new word. But if you only learn that imagen is image, how are you going to say the image? Or, for instance, some images are small. Is imagen masculine or feminine? Well, you may not know. Since it doesn't end in O or A, its gender is not obvious. But if from the beginning, instead of learning that image is imagen, you learn it as la imagen. Repitan, la imagen. Again, la imagen. Then, because you always think of image as la imagen, the way to say some images are small would clearly be unas imágenes son pequeñas. We've already seen a few plural nouns, but I'd like to make sure you know how to make any noun plural. If the noun ends in a vowel, to make it plural, you add es. So the plural of la forma is las formas. If the noun ends in a consonant other than Z, to make it plural, you add es. The plural of la realidad is las realidades. If the noun ends in the letter Z, to make it plural, you change the Z to C and add es. ¿Qué parte del cuerpo es esta? Es la nariz. Y la forma plural de la nariz es las narices. Here's more about forming plurals. And let me note that these are some rules that weren't discussed in our first course. The way to say the month in Spanish is el mes. The plural of el mes is los meses. Nothing unusual there. But if a noun ending in s has a last syllable that is unstressed, then the singular and plural forms of the noun are the same. The article will become plural, so el becomes los, la becomes las, but the noun itself does not change. Let's look at a few examples of this. The word crisis in Spanish is a cognate. It's also feminine. So in Spanish, the way to say the crisis is la crisis. Its plural form is las crisis. Do you remember how to say on Monday? Well, on Monday is el lunes, using the singular form. To say on Mondays, you change el lunes to its plural form, which is los lunes. Here's one last point on making nouns plural. If a noun ends in yon, to make it plural, you drop the accent and add es. The word solution is a cognate, so in Spanish it's la solución. The plural form of la solución is las soluciones. It's the same with the word nation, which in Spanish, in the singular, is la nación, and in the plural is las naciones. Notice that these plural forms have no accents. Bien, let's move now to subject pronouns. I'll give you the English for each of these pronouns used as the subject of a sentence. You give me the Spanish. First, the singular forms. I in Spanish is yo. The informal singular way to say you is tú. And you'll remember that you must put an accent over the you. The formal singular way to say you is usted. So that leaves us with he and she. He is él. Once again, note the accent over the E. She is ella. So repeat these singular subject pronouns after me. Yo, tú, usted, él, ella. Now, tell me the plural subject pronouns. The masculine way to say we is nosotros, which would be used by someone in a group with at least one male. If we include only females, the form used is nosotras. In Spain, but not in Latin America, they have an informal plural way of referring to you. The masculine form is vosotros, the feminine form is vosotras. The formal plural way to say you is ustedes, which is clearly the plural of usted. So, just to be clear, to say you in Spain, in the singular you have the informal tú form and the formal usted form. The plural of tú is vosotros or vosotras. The plural of usted is ustedes. In Latin America, the singular ways to say you are the same, tú, usted. But the only way to say you in the plural is ustedes, which is used in all cases. Finally, the masculine plural way to say they is ellos. Feminine plural way to say they is ellas. So those are the plural subject pronouns. Please repeat them after me. Nosotros, nosotras, vosotros, vosotras, ustedes, ellos, ellas. So let's use those subject pronouns as we conjugate the two Spanish verbs that mean to be, ser and estar. We'll start with ser. I'll give you the subject. You give me the appropriate form of the verb ser in the present. Yo soy, tú eres, ella es, nosotros somos, vosotras sois, ustedes son. Muy bien. Let's move on now to estar. Yo estoy, tú estás, ella está, nosotros estamos, vosotros estáis, ellas están. Even though ser and estar are irregular verbs, by this point in your studies, you shouldn't really have much difficulty conjugating them. The real challenge these two verbs present, and we'll be practicing with this in future lessons, is knowing when to use ser and when to use estar. We've seen a lot today, but there's one more activity I'd like us to do together. Let's go back to the Spanish I used at the start of the lesson. I'd like us to use the 3 C's, cognates, context, conjecture, to try to make sense of the new vocabulary and grammar I included in my introduction. So, let's have a go at understanding some Spanish that is most definitely beyond what is taught in a first Spanish course. You'll be able to read the entire introduction in both Spanish and English in the workbook. In what we're about to do, however, I'll be focusing specifically on new grammar and new vocabulary. So, the beginning is fairly straightforward. The only tricky part is when I say it's a verdadero pleasure to be here with you. You might remember that la verdad means truth. Knowing that, and using context here, you might guess that I'm saying that being with you is a true or real pleasure, which is what verdadero means. Next sentence. Can you guess the meaning of continuación? Right? It's a cognate meaning continuation. At the end here, I say, it's a course that some of you probably han tomado. We know that tomar can mean to take, so it's a course that some of you probably guess. Some of you probably have taken. So, han tomado is a verb in the present perfect, a new verb tense we'll be learning in this course. I then say that to all the students, les doy la bienvenida. I had earlier said bienvenidos, welcome. So you might figure out that the expression dar la bienvenida means to welcome. I also say it's un honor being able to be your professor. And it's true, it is an honor. Next, I say I'm very agradecido to all of you for haber decidido study Spanish with me. So I'm very, guess, agradecido is grateful, and haber decidido is definitely a challenge. You have seen that decidir is a cognate meaning to decide. Haber decidido means having decided. And haber, to have, is a verb you'll become very familiar with because it's used with the present perfect tense. Okay, so next I'm going to explain and you are going to learn. We also trabajaremos together. You know trabajar means to work, and given the context here, trabajaremos means we will work, which is in the future, another tense we'll be learning. Now, guess some vocabulary. Culturales is cultural. Hispanohablante is Spanish speaking or a Spanish speaker. And la habilidad is ability. So how are we going to do all this? With lots of práctica, which is practice. Yo he preparado is I have prepared in the present perfect. And you might guess that lógica is an adjective meaning logical. Your work será, which is will be, there's the future tense again. Con atención is with attention or carefully. So, you're going to do exercises that are orales y escritos, oral and written. I'm also encouraging you to practicar fuera del curso, meaning practice outside of class. And the expression por lo menos means at least. Okay, now our last paragraph. I say it's time to concluir, which is to conclude. We've already learned that finales means final, and we can use conjecture to guess that la introducción is introduction, yet another cognate. The noun idioma looks feminine, but is masculine. And en el idioma means in the language. You might have noticed some unusual verb forms here in the last few sentences. Tengan, aprendan, and haya are all in the present subjunctive, and you'll be learning how to use the subjunctive near the end of this course. Using context, you might have been able to determine some of the Spanish I was using. I said, it's good that you have interest, I want you to learn a lot, and it's necessary that there be more bilinguals. Notice that bilingüe is another cognate. And in my last sentence, I said, hemos llegado a la conclusión, meaning we have arrived, there's the present perfect again, at the conclusion, yet another cognate. Thank you, Spanish, for having so many cognates with English. Let me say that what we just did was quite challenging for someone who's just beginning a second course in the language, but developing the ability to use cognates, context, and conjecture when listening to or reading Spanish will be of great help to you in understanding the language. Final point. Some of you might be wondering what sort of Spanish I'm teaching in this class. Well, I speak with a Latin American accent, but the Spanish you're learning in this course will be understood by Spanish speakers in all parts of the world. There are some differences in pronunciation, vocabulary, and grammar, depending on where the language is spoken, and I'll be discussing this in future lessons. Still, Spanish speakers from all parts of the world have no trouble understanding each other. Muy bien, buen trabajo, estudiantes. Ya terminamos nuestra primera lección de nuestro segundo curso. Hasta pronto.
Glosario en audio, lección 1.
Give the Spanish for the following English words. Then repeat the Spanish word. True, real.
Verdadero,
Continuation,
la continuación.
welcome,
La bienvenida.
to welcome,
Dar la bienvenida.
honor,
El honor.
grateful,
Agradecido.
to have,
Haber.
cultural,
Cultural.
Spanish speaking,
Hispanohablante.
Spanish speaker,
El hispanohablante.
ability,
La habilidad.
practice,
La práctica.
to practice,
Practicar.
logical,
Lógico.
carefully,
Con atención.
oral,
Oral.
written,
Escrito.
outside,
Fuera.
at least,
Por lo menos.
to conclude,
Concluir.
introduction,
La introducción.
final,
Final.
language,
El idioma.
bilingual,
Bilingüe.
conclusion,
La conclusión.
introductory,
Introductorio.
form,
La forma.
reality,
La realidad.
motive,
El motivo.
limit,
El límite.
social,
Social.
to respect,
Respetar.
success,
El éxito.
Exit.
La salida.
To manage. To achieve. To get.
Lograr.
Area. Feminine.
El área.
Adventure.
La aventura.
Image.
La imagen.
Crisis.
La crisis.
Solution.
La solución.
Nation.
La nación. Actividades de conversación. Lección 1.
Listen to the following conversation and then answer the questions that follow. Hola, ¿cómo estás?
Muy bien, gracias.
¿Tienes hambre?
Si tengo mucha hambre.
Podemos ir a desayunar al restaurante que está cerca. Tienen buenos sándwiches de jamón y queso. Son mis favoritos. ¿Te gustan los sándwiches?
Sí, me gustan, pero no me gusta el jamón. Soy vegetariana.
Estoy seguro que tienen más cosas en el menú.
¿Puedo tomar un café, frutas y un yogur?
Perfecto. Vamos. Ella tiene mucha o poca hambre.
Ella tiene mucha hambre.
¿Cuál es el sándwich favorito de él?
Su sándwich favorito es el de jamón y queso.
¿Por qué a ella no le gusta el jamón?
A ella no le gusta el jamón porque es vegetariana.
¿Qué quiere beber ella?
Ella quiere beber un café.
Give the Spanish cognate for the following English words. For example, hospital,
El hospital.
ideal,
Ideal.
university,
La universidad.
family,
La familia.
social,
Social.
limit,
El límite.
image,
La imagen.
to respect,
Respetar.
form,
La forma.
motive,
El motivo.
adventure,
La aventura.
to practice,
Practicar.
practice,
La práctica.
crisis,
La crisis.
continuation,
La continuación.
honor,
El honor.
to conclude,
Concluir.
ability,
La habilidad.
introduction,
La introducción.
international,
Internacional.
bilingual,
bilingüe.
Change the following nouns from plural to singular. For example, las naranjas,
La naranja.
los cambios,
El cambio.
unas farmacias,
Una farmacia.
unas escuelas,
Una escuela.
las áreas,
El área.
los lápices,
El lápiz.
los exámenes,
El examen.
los televisores,
El televisor.
unos estudiantes,
Un estudiante.
las estadounidenses,
La estadounidense.
unas lecciones,
Una lección.
Change the following nouns from singular to plural. For example, la revista,
Las revistas.
una computadora,
Unas computadoras.
un amigo,
Unos amigos.
el papel,
Los papeles.
la aventura,
Las aventuras.
el hotel,
Los hoteles.
una universidad,
Unas universidades.
el coche,
Los coches.
una semana,
Unas semanas.
el idioma,
Los idiomas.
el área,
Las áreas.
Give the indefinite article for the following nouns. For example, libro,
Un libro.
calendario,
Un calendario.
cafetería,
Una cafetería.
diccionarios,
Unos diccionarios.
mapa,
Un mapa.
agenda,
Una agenda.
maestros,
Unos maestros.
problema,
Un problema.
gatos,
Unos gatos.
palabra,
Una palabra.
Listen to the following conversation and then answer the questions.
Hola Bill, te presento a Cristina. Ella es estudiante en la universidad.
Mucho gusto.
Igualmente.
¿Cuántas clases tienes este semestre?
Tengo 5 clases y tengo mucho trabajo en todas las clases.
¿Te gusta esta universidad?
Me encanta. Las personas son muy amables y simpáticas.
¿Qué piensas de los profesores?
Pienso que son excelentes.
¿Cuántas clases tiene Cristina este semestre?
Ella tiene 5 clases.
¿A Cristina le gusta o no le gusta la universidad?
Sí, a ella le gusta la universidad.
¿Qué opina Cristina sobre las personas en la universidad?
Ella opina que las personas son amables y simpáticas.
¿Qué piensa Cristina de los profesores?
Ella piensa que son excelentes.